Namaskar, friends, good afternoon. And thank you very much for joining us today for a special briefing on Prime Minister's visit to Vladivostok for the Eastern Economic Forum, which will be preceded by a bilateral visit. The dates of the visit are 4th and 5th September. I have with me the Foreign Secretary of India, Shri Vijay Gokhale. I also have Joint Secretary ERS, Shri Manish. After the initial remarks by the Foreign Secretary, I will open the floor to questions. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ravish, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to brief you about Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to Russia. It's going to be a short visit, just 36 hours. He will arrive in Vladivostok on the 4th September morning and depart from Vladivostok on 5th September evening. And there are two main purposes for this visit. He has been invited to attend the Eastern Economic Forum by President Putin as one of the chief guests. And secondly, he will also hold the 20th annual summit between India and Russia. The previous editions of the Eastern Economic Forum, this is a forum started by Russia in 2015, have been attended by our former Commerce and Industry Minister in 2018 and our former External Affairs Minister in 2017. So we've had regular high-level, political-level attendance at this Eastern Economic Forum. Before I get into some of the details of the two elements of the visit, I wanted to share some of the program elements. In the forenoon, after he arrives, the President and the Prime Minister will make a joint visit to one of their major shipbuilding yards. This is a plant that makes vessels including icebreakers and oil tankers. So the two leaders will go together to see this plant. And then in the afternoon of the 4th, there will be restricted and delegation level talks followed by dinner. On the 5th morning, there will be some bilaterals. The head of state of Mongolia and the prime ministers of Japan and Malaysia will also be attending the Eastern Economic Forum, but at this stage I'm not in a position to confirm which of these bilaterals will take place, but they will take place, some of them. And subsequently in the afternoon is the Eastern Economic Forum plenary meeting, and then just before Prime Minister departs, President Putin and PM will jointly visit a major judo championship which is taking place in Vladivostok before PM returns back to Delhi. There is actually a 6-member Indian judo team in Vladivostok also participating in this championship. It is an international championship. The Eastern Economic Forum, as I mentioned, is an event they've been holding since 2015 every year in Vladivostok. The main event is, of course, in St. Petersburg every May. And the Prime Minister will deliver an address. There will also be an India-Russia business dialogue. And for this, a 50-member FICCI delegation is also going to be in Vladivostok at the same time. You will recall that the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of the Far East and Arctic Affairs, Deputy Prime Minister Trutnev, had come to India on 20th of June to prepare for Prime Minister's visit. And subsequent to that, a very high-powered government and business delegation had visited Vladivostok on the 11th and 12th of August. This included chief ministers of 4 states of Gujarat, Goa, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, and our Commerce and Industry Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal. They were accompanied by a business delegation of almost 150 business persons. And this was a clear intent on part of our government to show that we attach importance to the Russian Far East as an area where we can do business, as well as an area of geopolitical importance to us in the context of the Indo-Pacific. There was a round table that our 4 chief ministers had. 11 governors of Russian provinces attended. Several MOUs were signed. A number of Russian companies participated. So we demonstrated a seriousness of intent in engaging with the Russian Far East, with which we have had relatively limited economic and commercial contact, because our focus has mostly been either Europe and Russia or the area just north of the Central Asian republics. Of course, among the potential sectors are coking coal, obviously oil and gas, diamonds, timber, tourism, And from our perspective, we are also looking at the possibility of farming and also of manpower exports. There's a serious shortage of manpower in that part of the world. And as I said, the Eastern Economic Forum therefore gains in importance not only because we would like to develop strong economic and commercial relations. Many of the resources are something India needs in the near future, but it is also because of the opening of the Northern Sea route, the Arctic route to Europe, which because of climate change and global warming is now much easily accessed as compared to even 20 or 30 years ago, and also the possibility of oil and gas supplies from the Arctic. So there are a number of reasons why we are looking at the Eastern Economic Forum, and this is why Prime Minister readily agreed to President Putin's invitation. The annual summit, of course, is also taking place in Vladivostok. The last one was in Delhi on the 5th of October last year. And since then, the two leaders have met 4 times, twice at the G20 in Buenos Aires and Osaka, at the SCO summit in Bishkek, and at the East Asia summit last November in Singapore. We have had fairly intensive political interaction since the last summit. From the Russian side, we've had Defense Minister Shoigu. We've had 2 deputy prime ministers after the government reassumed office, which is Deputy Prime Minister Trutnev, whom I had mentioned, and Deputy Prime Minister Borisov, who is the head of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission. We've had the Speaker of the Russian Duma, or the Russian Parliament, and we've had their NSA as well. From our side, of course, last week we had External Affairs Minister, who visited at the invitation of Lavrov. We had the NSA, who has gone earlier in July. We had the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, who has just returned. And of course, Commerce and Industry Minister, I mentioned, visited Vladivostok along with the 4 chief ministers. So fairly intensive political interaction in the last 1 year, and particularly after the government has assumed office for the second time. We have a very special relationship with Russia. The annual summits are occasions to look at the entire gamut, principally focusing on bilateral relations. I think there is an intent on the part of both leaders, and Prime Minister has said this on a number of times. We need to broaden the relationship with Russia beyond civil nuclear and defense into other areas of the economy. And one of the reasons why this very sizable government come business delegation went to Vladivostok was precisely to fulfill that objective. So there will obviously be discussions on that in those areas. Obviously, oil and gas is a major sector for us. That will be covered. Space is a major area for us. The Russian government has extended cooperation on our Gaganyaan program. That is an important area for us. The railway sector is important. We are in the process of finalizing a feasibility report, or rather the Russians are in the process of finalizing a feasibility report for some sectors for speed raising on some sectors. And obviously there will inevitably be discussion on how we can work better in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in RIC, that is Russia, India, China, and in BRICS. And as you know, the BRICS summit is coming up down the road. If time is available, obviously certain important regional issues will be discussed. That includes the situation in the Gulf, discussions on DPRK, and of course the fast evolving situation in Afghanistan. Obviously we expect a number of concrete outcomes. There is the inevitable joint statement will of course be there, but more important than that will be a roadmap on hydrocarbon cooperation, a 5-year roadmap laying out what possibilities we have in cooperating in oil and gas, both in terms of exploration and exploitation and in terms of purchase in the 5-year time frame 2019 to 2024, as we seek to diversify our oil and gas supplies beyond complete dependency in the Gulf. Some specific letters of intent will also be signed between Indian public sector companies and Russian entities for development of oil and gas fields. I will leave the details for the Prime Minister's press statement, so I will not disclose that at the moment. A number of MOUs are expected to be signed between Coal India and the Russian counterpart for export of coking coal and for cooperation in the mining sector, between the Steel Authority of India Limited and the Russian counterpart for import of metallurgical coal, and for cooperation in the mining sector, between the Steel Authority of India Limited and the Russian counterpart for import of metallurgical coal, and for cooperation in the mining sector, between the Steel Authority of India Limited and the Russian counterpart for import of metallurgical coal, on audiovisual, in the area of audiovisual co-production, in the power sector, in developing a maritime route between Chennai and Vladivostok, and a number of business MOUs also, 8 or 10 of them in fairly important areas. I won't go into those details. I'm sure that these will be covered in the press statement. So essentially, this is the broad outline of the Prime Minister's program and of his of the agenda when he visits Russia. I'll stop there, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them on this subject.
Thank you very much, sir. We will take only questions related to Prime Minister's visit to Russia. एक सेकंड रुकिए, ऐसे नहीं होगा. सिद्धांत, आपके पास माइक आएगा, फिर बोलिएगा.
Hi, sir. My question is, given the fact that defense is a focus point when it comes to India-Russia relationship, can we expect some major announcement on defense, especially on the KA-226 deal, which many are hoping that it might be signed, given the fact that it's been considerable time now?
अच्छा, यही हो गया ना डिफेंस वाला, ठीक है. प्रणय.
So can you give us a clarity about the S-400 deal? Has India made any initial payment to Russia in this regard?
Is it defense related? Then we'll wait. Sir, I think okay.
So I guess you're stressing on how we're broadening our energy partnership with Russia, and the Prime Minister's priority will also be the same. But keeping this in mind, to what extent do we aim to broaden our energy partnership with Russia in terms of importing our energy from there? We have set some targets when it comes to the relationship with US, but vis-a-vis Russia, how much of our energy needs are we looking to meet for the Russian government?
Thank you. On the defense sector, obviously there will be discussions between the two sides. That, as I said, is one of the pillars of our cooperation. As far as I'm aware, there will be no announcement regarding any specific agreements that have been reached. As far as the S-400 is concerned, Pranay, this is a matter which is handled by the Ministry of Defense. So you will have to direct a question to them as to how far we have proceeded in the implementation of the agreement. As far as oil and gas is concerned, Aditya, I think, as I said, one of the objectives of this visit is in fact to diversify and not to have a dependency on any one country or any one region. To that extent, we are looking at two entirely different issues. One is exploration of oil and gas in proven areas where there are reserves. And as I said, we expect actually to be possibly even announcing, by we I mean the public sector corporations, not the government of India, in announcing some investments in new oil clusters, oil field clusters. The other is, of course, import of LNG from Russia. And there too, as far as I'm aware, there is a proposal, there is something concrete which will either be announced during the visit or just after the visit. So, in other words, there is I mean, the intent to develop greater ties in energy between India and Russia is going to be followed by actual action on the ground.
I'll take the next lot of 3 questions. Maha, and then Sandeep and Ranjit ji.
Sir, this is with regards to the expected bilaterals in Russia. You mentioned that there could be one with the Malaysian side. In that, will India raise the issue of Zakir Naik, considering there have been some, contradictory statements coming from Malaysia with regards to the possibility of him being extradited or deported?
Sandeep.
So on energy ties, there was talk of an oil pipeline between Russia and India. Is it still on or gone off the table?
Thank you. Ranjit ji.
Yeah, any new agreement for construction of 6 nuclear power plants likely to be signed? And what will be the site for these 6 nuclear power plants?
Thank you. Sir.
Sorry. Sort of answering in reverse order, no new agreement is going to be signed at this annual summit. We are at the moment in the process of implementing the 6 units of Kudankulam nuclear power plant, and obviously there will be some discussion in progressing that aspect. Sandeep, the oil pipeline between India and Russia is still very much a subject for discussion, but of course it involves certain other countries en route, and there is more than one complication involved there. So I would presume that while discussion would take place, any concrete development would depend upon how the issue of US sanctions on Iran progresses, as well as, of course, our relationship with Pakistan, because it traverses both these regions. Maha, as far as Malaysia and Zakir Naik is concerned, as I said, as of now, we are still waiting for confirmations on the bilateral. So I really do not wish to comment at this stage on what issues might be raised, but we will certainly do a briefing thereafter. And if there is a meeting with Malaysia, we will certainly brief the media on what was discussed.
Ji, Vijay ji, udhar.
Since huge business delegation is going to Vladivostok, I understand that the diamond business between India and Vladivostok, that is Gujarat and Vladivostok, has been taking place since 1991, 1992 actually, as you know. Do we still maintain a consulate in Vladivostok, number one? And what is going to happen so far as the diamond trade is concerned between India and Vladivostok?
Thank you. Venkat ji.
Considering that 150 Indian businessmen and 4 chief ministers were in Vladivostok, do we know how many MOUs for cooperation investment were signed? What is the total possible investment and any other details? Thanks.
Okay, one more.
So it's expected the cross-border terror, an issue which India has been discussing with other major countries, will be raised. What has been the Russians' position on this issue, on the issue of cross-border terror? We know on the Kashmir, the Russians have backed India completely, calling it an internal issue. But on cross-border terror, what has been Moscow's stance?
Thank you. Vijayji, to confirm, yes, we have a consulate in Vladivostok. That consulate continues to be in operation, and there is absolutely no intention of closing it down. For us, in fact, its salience has increased as the whole issue of the Indo-Pacific is becoming more and more important to us. And also, if the Northern Sea route or the Arctic route opens, shipping will go via Vladivostok to Europe over the Northern Sea route. So we in fact envisage that the consulate will probably become more and more important rather than less and less relevant. As far as the diamond trade is concerned, you're absolutely correct. We've had 1 or 2 Indian companies also investing there. The idea is to get into it in a much greater way, because we have a large diamond processing industry in India. And one of the possibilities, therefore, is seeing if private sector investment is possible, and linked to that also manpower exports in that regard, because there's a shortage of people even to process diamonds there. So this is something which is one of the focal points of our efforts in the Russian Far East. Venkatji, I have details of likely MOUs that the private sector will sign. Obviously, the idea of the government come business delegation was that the government would facilitate the process. But by itself, other than umbrella MOUs, and I mentioned some of them, the governments are not going to sign MOUs of a commercial nature. But FICCI has shared with us the information of some of the MOUs which may be signed. And without going into the companies concerned, I would say there are about 15 or 16 which could be signed, mostly in the private sector, but some which involve PSUs as well. Now, again, the sectors concerned, I think, are mining, skills development, steel, medicine, education, and agriculture. And as I said, most of them are private sector MOUs that are going to be signed. Siddhant, just to be absolutely clear, the Russian Federation has clearly stated that they stand fully behind India on this whole issue. And that issue is on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, whether it is Article 370, whether it is cross-border terrorism, we have no doubt, and this has been reiterated when External Affairs Minister recently visited, that the Russian side is fully behind us on this matter.
We'll take another set of set of 3 questions. Smita.
Considering that India had finally sent in non-official, official representatives in the Moscow format on Afghanistan, and with Russia, with reports coming in now that the copy of the framework agreement between US and Taliban has actually been shared with or shown to the government in Kabul. What really are India's concerns at this point in time? Is, in terms of India and Russia, is there a common ground there on the same page? Are you simply being an observer? And would really appreciate if, after the questions on Russia are over, if we could get some clarity on the consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav that played out this afternoon, please.
Anybody else? Yes, Srinjoy.
So, the Russians appear to have welcomed India's suggestion about training of Indian astronauts in their areas. 3 are being spoken of, 2 men, 1 woman. Can you tell us can you give us some more detail on this?
Elizabeth, you have a question? Yeah, is there?
So you mentioned manpower exports to the Russian Far East. Could you elaborate on that? And the connectivity between Chennai and Vladivostok as well. What are the plans for that?
Again, I'll just go by reverse order. You see, we are exploring the possibility of sending people with some skills in areas wherever there is manpower shortage. That's not just limited to the Far East of Russia. This is some effort that we have been making in a number of countries. But this is one of the areas where we now feel that there is a good potential. Essentially, these are skilled workers. And in some of the sectors that I mentioned, because most of the Russian Far East is essentially either the mineral sector or agricultural sector. Now, we are still at the early stage because as we do with other countries, you have to have an agreement, either with the Europeans, what we call a migration and mobility agreement, or with the other countries, we have labor agreements. So we are not at the stage yet of implementing it immediately, but what I can say is that we have received an encouraging response from the Russian side, and now we will proceed to explore it once this visit is over. It is important for us, and we will give priority to this. As far as connectivity is concerned, as I said, the effort is to build shipping links between Chennai and Vladivostok. By that, I want to be clear. I don't mean to say there's going to be any announcement of a shipping, a shipping service between Chennai and Vladivostok immediately or anything of the kind. But I think there's a recognition that an alternative route to Europe through the northern route is now a possibility that we should look at in terms of the economic benefits it might bring us with the northeast of Asia and beyond, particularly because a lot of the new oil and gas finds and mineral finds are in this region. So I think this is the start of a process. It will take a while, but we felt that it is important to start, and PM's whole visit to Vladivostok essentially is a signal of the fact that we attach importance to this part of Russia, a part that we have not really bothered about for the last maybe 6 decades or 7 decades. Srinjoy, Russia is one of the few countries which has end-to-end capability on human space flight, and so they are a natural partner for us. I don't have any detailed information on the astronauts or even on the training program, except to know that there will be training in both countries done by them. So some of the training will be in Russia, some of the training will be in India as well. That is still being worked out, but I have no further details that I can share with you on who has been selected or what is the nature of the training. Smita, although your question is not strictly related to Russia, I just want to say that as far as India and Russia are concerned, we have common ground. We both believe that at the end of the process, whatever is the outcome of discussions between the United States and the Taliban, what we both hope to see is a stable political situation where there is a political order and where there is a guarantee that the peace agreement or the post-agreement process will hold. To that extent, we have regular consultations. The most recent were, in fact, when the External Affairs Minister was in Russia. And by and large, we have been on the same page with Russia on this. So we expect that as we go down the road, and as yet there's no announcement, we will continue to work closely with them. On the question of what sort of representation we make if and when the next round of intra-Afghan talks take place, and if we are invited, I don't want to speculate. But all I want to say at this stage is it is an important point, and we are giving very serious consideration on this matter. My colleague tells me that we will shortly be issuing a statement relating to the consular access given to us today by our Charge d'Affaires to Shri Kulbhushan Sudhir Jadhav. Thank you.
We'll take the last round of 3 questions if we still have. Yeah. Suhasini? The mic is coming to you, just hold on.
Thank you. Foreign Secretary, if I could just continue with Smita's question on Afghanistan, because this is a key area where India and Russia have had discussions. And as Smita pointed out, we actually sent a delegation where the Taliban was, or a non-official delegation, to talks with the Taliban there. The question really, do India and Russia feel that the outcome of these talks, what you just said, the outcome of the discussions between the two, are actually legitimate, given that the government in Kabul, which both India and Russia have said must be front and center of any discussion, has not even been part of the negotiations?
Is there?
So a quick question around ICT. Anything that's on agenda around 5G or cybersecurity bilaterally between the two countries? Thanks.
The last question, Ji.
There has been reports that India has called Russia and Japan to form a new trilateral. Can you please give us some details?
Can you just share your name as well?
My name is Tawqir Hussain. I work with the Yomuri Shimbun in Japan.
Thank you. Tawqir.
Sorry, I didn't get.
Can you repeat the question, please?
There has been some reports that India has called Russia and Japan to form a new trilateral. Can you give us more details about it?
Thank you. Tawqir, we have no details to share in this matter because as of now there is no scheduled meeting or scheduled discussion on this subject. What I can say is that we are interested in working with any third country in the Russian Far East because we believe that other countries also have the capacity to invest there and we would like to partner with them. So I think it's a general statement of intent on our part that we are ready not only to do bilateral investments but to partner with third countries in the Russian Far East. There's no individual country that we are in particular at this stage speaking to. I'm sorry I didn't get your name on this 5G cybersecurity. I just want to mention that there is unlikely to be any discussion at the leaders level. We of course have a cybersecurity dialogue with Russia. But on this particular issue, I would be sort of surprised if there is any discussion, although obviously I can't prejudge what subjects will be discussed by the two leaders. Suhasini, I have to be very careful in this matter and simply to say that let's see as to firstly, I think we support all peace initiatives. We have been a part of all of them, and in some cases, even though we have not initially been a part of them, we have been supportive of them. Our issue has been what is the sort of post-settlement situation. And in that regard, our position has been very clear. We prefer a system where which has constitutional legitimacy, which has a political mandate, which will ensure stability, and most important, which will not leave ungoverned spaces for terrorists or their proxies to take advantage of. I think that's our position. We are yet to hear the details of the US-Taliban agreement. As and when we hear the details, I'm sure that we will put out a statement or we will comment. But until then, it would be difficult for me to come on the record with anything.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Manish. This concludes the special briefing on
Thank
Prime
you.
Minister's visit to Russia. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.